Be me, Silas, 28. Work as an IT engineer. Decent job, my own place, financially stable. Not asking for much in life, just want things to be fair. My dating life for the past couple of years has been a bit of a dumpster fire. It feels like a series of job interviews where I'm always the unqualified candidate. A few months back, went out with a girl who spent the whole dinner talking about her travel plans to Bali and Dubai. When the check came, she just smiled and started checking her phone. I'm not talking about a cheap meal either. This was one of those places with tiny food and huge prices. Paid for it, of course. Never heard from her again. Another time, a girl straight up told me on the first date that she was looking for a man who could give her a comfortable lifestyle. She said this while having no job of her own. I was starting to think genuine partnership was a myth, something you only see in old movies. I was getting cynical, pretty much ready to just focus on work and my hobbies. Then, sometime last spring, I met Stacy. A friend from college invited me to a casual get-together at a local brewery. She was there with a mutual acquaintance. Smart, funny, worked as an assistant at a modern art gallery. We hit it off immediately, just easy conversation. Asked her out for the following week. We went for dinner. The whole time, I'm mentally preparing for the usual end-of-date awkwardness with the bill. The waiter puts it on the table. Before I can even reach for my wallet, her card is already out. I do the polite thing, say something like, "Oh no, I've got it." She just looks at me, dead serious, and shakes her head. She explained her whole philosophy right then and there. It was a whole speech about how she couldn't stand outdated patriarchal dynamics. The idea of a man paying for everything made her feel like she was being bought. Her core principle for any relationship was a strict 50-50 split on everything. She called it equitable partnership. No exceptions. I was honestly stunned. It was like a breath of fresh air. Here was this woman who was not only independent, but was proud of it and made it a non-negotiable part of her life. It felt like I'd found a unicorn. We split the bill down to the cent. We started seeing each other regularly after that. It was great. Every single time we went out, she was true to her word. Coffee, movie tickets, dinner, groceries. It was always 50-50. She even downloaded one of those expense-splitting apps to keep track of everything. If I paid for something, she'd immediately send me her half. No reminders needed. After a few months of dating, the topic of moving in together came up. It seemed like the natural next step. She was the one who found the place. A nice one-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood. It wasn't cheap, but it was definitely manageable if we were splitting the rent. We sat down and went over the budget like a business meeting. Rent, utilities, internet, groceries. Everything was calculated and divided by 2. It was the most adult and straightforward relationship I'd ever been in. I told my colleague at work about her. He's this older, divorced guy who's seen it all. He just grunted and said, "If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is." I just brushed it off. He was just jaded from his own experiences. This was different. The first 6 months of living together were pretty much perfect. We had a good routine, shared chores, everything felt balanced. The first little thing that seemed off happened around Christmas time. She came home with a new designer handbag. I know a little about that stuff, and I knew it was one of those brands that costs more than our monthly rent. My first thought was that it was a fake, a really good one. I asked her about it, trying to be casual. Her explanation was that she was just incredibly good at managing her money. She had a special savings account just for luxury items and had been putting a little bit away every month for over a year. Plus, she claimed she found some insane, once-in-a-lifetime sale online. It sounded a bit far-fetched for someone working an assistant-level job at an art gallery. But who was I to argue? I wanted to believe her. It was easier to believe she was a financial wizard than to think something else was going on. But the little oddities started to stack up. She'd talk about going out for expensive lunches with her gallery co-workers. Her wardrobe was slowly but surely being replaced with high-end clothing. Whenever I'd bring it up, the answer was always the same. She was just a savvy shopper and a master budgeter. She even got a bit defensive one time, suggesting that maybe I was bad with money if I couldn't understand how she did it. She said something about me having a scarcity mindset, while she had an abundance mindset. It was weird, but I let it go. Our shared expenses were always paid on time, so her personal spending wasn't really my business. The real turning point came in the summer. She started talking about how our current apartment was holding us back. She said it didn't reflect our aspirations. I thought our aspirations were to be financially stable and build a future, but apparently I was wrong. Her aspirations involved a doorman and a rooftop pool. She started sending me listings for luxury apartments downtown, the kind of places with floor-to-ceiling windows, state-of-the-art gyms, and rents that made my eyes water. I told her flat out that there was no way we could afford that. I pulled up our budget spreadsheet. Look, Stacy, my half of the rent for one of these places would be almost my entire paycheck. This is where things got tense. It wasn't a fight, it was more like a very disappointing negotiation. She didn't yell. Instead, she got this look of profound disappointment on her face. She framed it as me not believing in us. Her argument was that this was an investment in our quality of life, that if we pushed ourselves, we would be motivated to earn more. She said she was willing to commit her 50% to this new, better life. The real question was I? She made it sound like I was the anchor weighing down our beautiful ship of progress. She even threw in a comment about how this kind of financial caution was a form of toxic male anxiety, and that I needed to be more ambitious and take risks. It was a masterclass in emotional manipulation. And like an idiot, I fell for it. I felt guilty. I felt like I was failing her, that I was the one with the problem. I looked at my own finances. If I cut out pretty much every single personal expense, and if I started taking on freelance projects on the side, I could maybe, just maybe make it work. It would be tight. I would have zero savings and zero social life, but I could do it. So I agreed. We found a place. It was exactly what she wanted. 2 bedrooms, amazing view, a gym that was nicer than most commercial ones. The day we signed the lease, she was ecstatic. I felt a knot of dread in my stomach. My life changed overnight. My day job was from 9 to 5. My freelance work was from 8 p.m. until 2 in the morning. I was constantly exhausted. I started drinking way more coffee just to function. I stopped seeing my friends because I either had no time or no money. A $10 beer was a luxury I couldn't afford. I was eating instant noodles for dinner while trying to debug code for a client. Meanwhile, life for Stacy didn't seem to change at all. In fact, it got better. She was always using the new building's gym. She hosted a wine and cheese night for her friends in our new spacious living room. I was too busy working in the second bedroom to even say hello. She bought new, expensive furniture to match the apartment's aesthetic. She started planning a trip to Italy for the following year. "We can put it on the splitwise," she said cheerfully one evening as I was staring blankly at my laptop screen, completely burned out. The disparity was becoming impossible to ignore. I was running myself into the ground just to afford my half of our shared life. She was living her best life, seemingly without any financial stress whatsoever. My colleague at work pulled me aside one day. He said I looked like death. He asked if everything was okay at home. I gave him the short version, about the new apartment and the 50-50 split. He just shook his head slowly. "Silas," he said, "I'm not trying to get in your business, but I was married for 15 years. I know what financial pressure looks like. One of you is carrying all the weight, and it's you." His words stuck with me. I started paying closer attention. It wasn't just that she could afford her half. It was that she seemed to have an endless supply of disposable income on top of it. New shoes, regular salon appointments, weekend brunches. The math just wasn't mathing. Her salary at the gallery couldn't possibly cover her half of our exorbitant rent, plus this lavish lifestyle. Not even close. I tried to bring it up again, as gently as I could. One evening, I just asked her straight up how she managed it all. I told her I was struggling, and that I was impressed by her financial skills. She gave me a patronizing little smile. She said that successful women know how to create multiple streams of income, and that she did some online consulting for artists. It was vague and evasive. She then turned it around on me, saying my stress was creating negative energy in our beautiful home. She suggested I should look into meditation, or maybe find a higher-paying job if I couldn't handle the pressure. The conversation ended with me feeling like a failure, and her acting like a patient, benevolent guru dealing with her struggling partner. I was living in a state of constant low-grade anxiety. The apartment that was supposed to be an investment in our future felt like a prison made of glass and steel. I felt trapped in a life that I was paying for but couldn't afford to enjoy. The whole equitable partnership was starting to feel like a scam, and I was the only one paying the price. I was losing sleep, losing weight, and worst of all, I was losing respect for myself for letting this happen. I knew something was wrong, but I had no proof. All I had were my suspicions and a growing sense of resentment. The illusion was cracking, and I had a feeling that whatever was underneath was not going to be pretty. The breaking point came on a random Tuesday night. It wasn't dramatic or explosive. It was quiet and accidental, and it changed everything. I was up late, trying to finish a freelance project that I was already behind on. My laptop, an old machine I'd been meaning to replace for a year, finally decided it had had enough. The screen flickered, went black, and that was it. No amount of rebooting would bring it back. Panic set in. The project was due in the morning. This wasn't some minor assignment. It was a big client, and the payment was what I needed to make my half of the rent at the end of the week. Stacy was already asleep. I thought about my options. There weren't many. It was past midnight. Then I remembered her laptop. She had a brand new top-of-the-line model that she mostly used for her blog and browsing. I never touched her stuff. We had this unspoken rule about personal space and property. But this was an emergency. I tiptoed into the living room where she'd left it on the coffee table. I opened it up. She never logged out of anything. The screen lit up, showing her perfectly organized desktop. My plan was to quickly log into my cloud storage, download my files, finish the work, and put it back before she ever knew. But her web browser was already open from her last session, and the active tab was her online banking portal. I wasn't trying to snoop, I swear. It was just right there, filling the entire screen. My eyes were immediately drawn to the transaction history. I saw her payroll deposit from the art gallery. It was exactly the modest amount I had always assumed it was. Then I saw the transfers from her account to mine for her half of the bills, all neatly labeled. But it was the deposits that made my stomach drop. There was a recurring transaction on the first of every month. The sender was listed as Derek, last name. Her father. The amount was precisely half of our rent, down to the dollar. The transaction description simply said, apartment. I started scrolling back, month after month. It was the same every time, like clockwork, but it didn't stop there. There were other transfers from him, smaller but frequent. One for a few $100s with the note weekend fun. Another for $1,000 with the note for Italy. Another one for an amount that I recognized as the price of that designer handbag, with the note, happy birthday early, sweetie. It was all there, a complete detailed record of the lie I had been living. She wasn't a financial genius. She wasn't a savvy shopper or a secret consultant. She was being subsidized. Her entire independent lifestyle was a performance funded by her father. The 50-50 split, her grand principle, was a complete sham. Her 50% was a gift. My 50% was my sweat, my stress, my sleepless nights. We weren't partners. I was the only one actually paying for this life. I was just the guy who was brought in to cover the other half of the bill so she could play house. I felt a cold wave of anger wash over me. It wasn't loud or hot, just a chilling, quiet rage. The feeling of betrayal was immense. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the deception, the hypocrisy. She had lectured me about financial responsibility and ambition while secretly living on a trust fund. She had shamed me for my caution while taking zero personal risk herself. I closed the laptop, my project completely forgotten. I just sat there in the dark for a long time. The next morning, I waited for her to wake up and have her coffee. I didn't want to yell. I just wanted to see her reaction. I calmly walked into the kitchen, picked up her laptop, and opened it to the banking page. I placed it on the counter in front of her without a word. She looked at the screen, then at me. There was no shock, no guilt. Just a flicker of annoyance, like I had discovered a secret but insignificant detail. Okay, she said, taking a sip of her coffee. And the sheer audacity of that "and" floored me. I finally found my voice. And, Stacy, what is this? She let out an exasperated sigh, as if I were a child asking a stupid question. It's my dad helping me out. What's the big deal? I tried to explain it to her, calmly. The big deal is that our entire arrangement is based on this 50-50 principle. I've been killing myself working 2 jobs to afford my half of this place. I thought you were doing the same. I thought we were a team, making sacrifices together. She just stared at me blankly. Her response is something I will never forget. My half is paid, isn't it? I don't see what the problem is. Where the money comes from is my business. It's not like it's from another man. It's my family. You're just being weird and controlling about this. She actually said that. She accused me of being controlling. This has nothing to do with control, I said, my voice getting louder. This is about honesty. You watch me struggle. You watch me burn out. You even criticize me for being stressed about money, all while knowing you weren't sacrificing anything at all. It was all a lie. She started to get defensive, twisting my words. Oh, so now you're angry that my family loves and supports me? Maybe the real issue is your own insecurity. Maybe you're just mad that I have a safety net and you don't. This sounds a lot like toxic male fragility to me. That was it. The moment she pulled out the toxic label, I was done. It was her checkmate move, the thing she used to shut down any argument where she was clearly in the wrong. I just laughed. It was a hollow, empty laugh. You're right, I said. You are absolutely right. She looked surprised, expecting another argument. This partnership is over, I continued. I'm moving out. Now she looked panicked. The reality of the situation finally started to dawn on her. What? You can't just leave. We have a lease. I'm not just leaving, I told her. I'm giving my 30-day notice as required. You have 1 month to find a new roommate or figure out how to cover the full rent yourself. I'm sure your father can help with that. The next few weeks were incredibly awkward. I slept on the couch and barely spoke to her. She alternated between trying to apologize, without ever admitting she did anything wrong, and trying to guilt-trip me into staying. She said I was overreacting and throwing away a perfectly good relationship over a minor misunderstanding. I just packed my boxes. I found a small, simple apartment back in my old neighborhood. The rent was less than a third of my half at the luxury place. The day I moved out was the best day I'd had in a year. I felt this incredible sense of relief, like a massive weight had been lifted off my shoulders. About a week after I left, I got a call from an unknown number. It was her father, Derek. I was expecting him to yell at me for hurting his daughter, but his tone was surprisingly calm. He just wanted to hear my side of the story, so I told him everything, about the 50-50 rule, about me working myself into the ground, about the lectures on financial responsibility, about the discovery. He was quiet for a long time on the other end of the line. Then he just said, I see. Thank you for being honest with me, Silas. That was not my intention. He explained that he was just trying to help her get on her feet. He thought he was contributing to a genuine partnership, not funding a fantasy. He told me he'd had a long talk with Stacy. He had given her an ultimatum. Either find a job that could actually support her lifestyle, or move into an apartment she could afford entirely on her own salary. He was cutting off the lifestyle fund. Apparently, she hadn't taken it well. The ultimate irony is what happened next. She couldn't find a roommate willing to pay the exorbitant rent for the second bedroom. She couldn't afford the place on her own salary, not even close. She had to break the lease, paying a massive penalty fee. The last I heard from our mutual friend, Stacy had moved back in with her parents. Her blog about being a financially independent modern woman hasn't been updated in months. As for me, my life is so much simpler now, and better. I work my one job. I have savings again. I see my friends. My little apartment feels more like a home than that fancy glass box ever did. I learned a valuable lesson. Fairness in a relationship isn't about splitting the bills down the middle. It's about shared effort, shared sacrifice, and most importantly, shared honesty. I was so eager to find a partner who preached equality that I didn't see that her words were just a convenient cover for a very unequal reality. It's better to be alone and in control of your own life than to be a 50% partner in someone else's lie.